NIL is not really what you think it is. All these kids aren't getting NIL. These kids are getting collectives.
But where does the line cross to actual NIL deals?
A lot of people know exactly what the issues are in college football and exactly what we need to do to fix them.
Nick Saban and Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, are looking to eliminate NIL and fix college football. That sentence didn't really make a lot of sense, but here we are in the year 2025. We're right around May if you're watching this in a different time, and this is really deal official. It said that Nick Saban was expected to be named the co-chair of the Presidential Commission studying college sports. So obviously Nick Saban, one of the greatest collegiate coaches of all time, was one of the first names that was brought up, when Donald Trump was thinking about, I guess, saving college football. Now, I don't look, man, if the NCAA can't do it, I don't think that the United States government can fix college football. But we're going to go deeper into this, and we're going to hear from Nick Saban's thought points, because he's already basically turned it down. He said, I don't need to be doing that. I don't want anything to have to do with that. But before we get into that in the deeper NIL conversation, because we're going to get into this Xavier Lucas story, which is one, if you've been following the channel, you already know about, but it's going to explain the reason why the federal government really might need to step in and kind of fix some things. But before we do anything, man, I feel like it's kind of messed up. So Donald Trump said, and Donald Trump is an outspoken fan of Deion Sanders, by the way, right? You might not be a fan of Donald Trump, and hey, this is a football, because we're talking about football, right? So when it comes to football, apparently Donald Trump's a Deion Sanders fan, but you go with Nick Saban, nothing wrong with that, right? And then you go with the Texas Tech David Bailey, who is the leader of Texas Tech's, here it is, Texas Tech NIL collective founder, Cody Campbell, who sold his oil and natural gas company, Double Eagle, for $4.1 billion, will be the co-commissioner with Nick Saban in the whole Donald Trump thing. And remember, Texas Tech had the number one portal class because they absolutely backed a bunch of Brinks trucks up and signed a bunch of NIL deals. It's kind of funny that that he happens to be on the commission. I'm sure he's going to do some positive things for NIL. Now, one person I think you gotta add your name to is Deion Sanders. Now, he can't be on this commission, and I don't even think the commission is going to be real. Who knows? But if it was real and Deion Sanders wasn't about to coach another season in Colorado, how about somebody who actually has actionable ways to fix NIL and consistently talks about it, right? So first, Deion's going to explain to you what an NIL deal and the problem with it. Then we're going to give you a throwback to the Alamo Bowl, where he specifically was asked, what do you want to change about college football? And he says, I want to make sure these kids understand what they're doing with their money. Hear it.
Well, because NIL is not really what you think it is. All these kids aren't getting NIL. These kids are getting collectives. Okay, collectives is if we took an offering up in this classroom, we passed the bucket like a church, and you put it's a collection plate, and you put your collective in, and then we say, you know what, we got 10 players up here, and let's divide that. That player right there should get $10. That player right there should get $20. That's a collective. Yeah. NIL is a name, image, and likeness. Since I got time today, I want you to tell me how many players in college football that you've seen on commercials. 2.
And he's going to go deeper into it. Basically, again, we've seen this video 1,000 times. Just speaking to the fact that, yeah, it's pay for play. It's not name, image, and likeness. You're not actually going to different companies and different places and spaces and actually getting deals and getting signed. Now, some people do, right? Travis Hunter did. Shedeur Sanders did. Caleb Williams had those deals, right? Even Caitlin Clark was going crazy, like Deion says in that video. But where does the line cross to actual NIL deals? And you're going to see something consistently. I think Nick Saban and Deion Sanders are going to agree on a lot of different things, where it's not that they don't want the kids to get paid. It's that there's a better way to do it with actually enforcing it. And when we go through the Xavier Lucas story, I'll show you kind of why people think it's a real issue. So here is
I want to be on the cusp.
What's it called? This is Deion Sanders' response to what would you change in college football, and immediately, obviously, the BYU coach was talking about a lot of different things and positive. I think he even talked a little bit about the portal and stuff, but this is what Deion Sanders said.
Well, Coach gracefully answered that question. I think financial literacy classes should be mandatory, so these kids understand how to manage their money when they get their money, and I think it should be a pay scale. It should be structured. It can't be just Tom, Dick, and Harry gets this because he had a great year somewhere else. then that throws off the chemistry and the structure of your whole team. It's just like one of you guys coming out here, some guys from outside come in here and they make more money than you, and they hadn't even been doing the work that you've done. It's not fair. And I think the NFL has handled it right, and we need to mimic the NFL when it comes to that, because right now we're not pros, but we're semi-pro, and that's the way it's going. And if we don't get a hold of it, it's going to keep going left. And the teams that don't have the budgets, like us, it's going to be hard to sit up here in front of you and make it to a playoff game, because now it turns into pay-per-view, and we don't want.
And obviously that's something that's clear. It's something that a lot of fans have been talking about. It's something that clearly a lot of coaches have been talking about. But before we get deeper into it, because we're going to hear Nick Saban not only respond to the situation with the NIL commission, we got Kirby Smart, and he's going to have some similar concepts as well with Paul Feinbaum. I want to show you, and again, if y'all been watching my videos, if y'all been watching my channel, you know that I am super pro NIL. I was literally, when I was in high school, back in those archaic days when I was in high school, we were literally making multiple projects about why, players need to be paid X, Y, Z element of P. But this is the reason why things need to be fixed. And it's not necessarily had to do with NIL deals. It's actually, I don't even think it's anything wrong with pay to play necessarily. Now, this right here, and this is why the transfer portal and NIL, anytime they're talked about, they're intrinsically linked. If there was just NIL deals with no transfer portal the way it operates now, it's not a big deal. If it was just a transfer portal without the NIL working like it does right now, probably wouldn't be a big deal. But because they're paired together, you get situations like this. So if you're not familiar, Xavier Lucas was a standout true freshman defensive back for the University of Wisconsin. Again, a tale as old as time. University of Wisconsin, very historic football, right? They got some money. They've produced some top tier talent. But then you talk about someone in Miami who he ends up eventually going to, where they got just Brinks trucks to back up. I'm sorry. There's levels of money. There's historic teams, and then there's people with just Dallas Cowboy levels of money to back the Brinks trucks up with. And that's what Miami has. That's how they got Carson Beck. That's honestly how they got Cam Ward too, but that's another conversation for another day. A positive one though. So what does Miami do? Well, Miami goes ahead and, just like every other offseason during the transfer portal series, they went ahead and picked up a DB. Here's the problem though. Xavier Lucas was never officially entered into the transfer portal. Yeah, I know that doesn't really make a lot of sense. What happened was he filed to enter the transfer portal, but Wisconsin did not grant his papers. If you're not familiar, whenever you enter the transfer portal, it's a thing within the organization, right? So you have to send out a request to the school. The school sends you back here a release for you to officially be in the transfer portal. So that never happened, and Wisconsin didn't do it. And then the reasoning for that was because that Xavier Lucas had already signed an NIL deal. Well, he signed over, more specifically, his NIL rights, because a lot of schools are getting ready for the House Settlement Bill. And when the House Settlement Bill passes, obviously there's going to be a lot of weird stuff. And that's another whole can of worms. Like, how are we going to fix college football now when there's a settlement that's about to change everything, but nobody knows when it's going to be settled? Regardless, a lot of teams are getting prepared for the House settlement, and in doing so, they have, signed certain deals to basically future-proof them for that, right? So, whether it's, hey, your deal's going to change on this, it's going to be whatever it had. I don't know the details, but I know for a fact that they've been signing those deals and signing over the rights in order to make sure the transition is easier when and if ever the bill House passes and the House bill passes and things change in the in the worlds of NIL. So with that being said, he was never officially released in the transfer portal. However, he ended up going to Miami regardless, right? So he didn't officially enter the transfer portal. He officially signed his name over to another NIL group and company. And we're going to read this little excerpt from the University of Wisconsin, because they're saying that Miami essentially tampered. That's what they're saying. They're saying that how is it possible that Xavier Lucas, somebody who was not officially released into our university, who we have signature signed that, hey, your NIL rights belong to the University of Wisconsin, how is he now signing another NIL deal in Miami? And this is the reason why I think some people are rightfully wanting things to change. So here's a statement from the University of Wisconsin in Madison, right? We are disappointed that Xavier Lucas has chosen to withdraw from the University of Wisconsin. He has been a valued member of our football program, and we were looking forward to him helping continue to grow as a student, person, and football player. On December 2nd, 2024, Xavier and Wisconsin Athletics entered into a binding 2-year NIL agreement reflecting his strong commitment to continuing with the Wisconsin football program. We understand that he's also executed a separate agreement with the varsity collective. His agreement with Wisconsin Athletics included substantial financial compensation for Xavier under the terms of agreement between Xavier and Wisconsin. It remains in effect and enforceable. This is where things get confusing. It remains in effect and enforceable. And you know he's going to go sign some more deals in Miami. Badger student athletes who have signed these agreements expect Wisconsin athletics to honor the terms. In turn, Wisconsin Athletics relies on student athletes' representation in signing those agreements that they will do the same. A request to enter the transfer portal after entering into such agreement is inconsistent with the representations and mutual understandings of the agreement and explains the reason for not processing a transfer portal request under these circumstances. Under the transfer portal transfer provision used by Xavier this past week, any contact between a student athlete enrolled at one institution and the football program to which they are transferring is prohibited by NCAA rules. We have credible information indicating impermissible contact between Xavier and the University of Wisconsin football program personnel prior to Xavier's request to enter the transfer portal. So they're snitching. Wisconsin lost a player they didn't allow into the transfer portal, and now they snitching. So that's been the whole thing. A lawsuit is now pending, right? And if you want to go even deeper, you can talk about the whole Nico situation. Even though they say it's not NIL, Tennessee is saying that it's for NIL reasons. So not only that thing, and that's something to be looking out for, the Xavier Lucas situation, obviously the Nico Amavela situation that's going to continue to develop. And then you even have the University of Arkansas, which it kind of goes with the Nico situation, asking Nico's brother, who just transferred to UCLA with Nico, hey, give us our money back. Because since we signed you to contract, we owe you money back. So things are going to get real nasty unless either the federal government steps in, Nick Saban saves us, or literally real legislation is implied. So here is the response to this whole craziness with him wanting to join this commission to save college football.
Well, first of all, I don't know a lot about the commission, first of all. Secondly, I'm not sure we really need a commission. I think that, a lot of people know exactly what the issues are in college football and exactly what we need to do to fix them. I think the key to the drill is getting people together so that we can move it forward. So, I'm not opposed to players making money. I don't want anybody to think that. I just think the system that we're, the way it's going right now, it's not sustainable and probably not in the best interest of the student athletes across the board or the game itself. So I think we need to protect the brand and the competitive advantages and disadvantages that are being created right now, and I think we can fix all that. But I think we know how to do it, and I think not just me, but a lot of people, we just got to get everybody together to do it.
Whether you really went looking for this or not, and I know you didn't, you are now, at least media-wise, the center of attention at the absolute nadir of this conversation. If you could implement changes, where would you start?
Well, I think, first of all, the way all this started was, when President Trump spoke at, commencement at Alabama, he said, all my friends are saying college football is really messed up. Let's get together so we can figure out, how to fix it. And so that's how this all got started. But, I really don't want to get into the implementation of, what I would do. I think, the first thing is everybody's got a different state law, which creates advantages and disadvantages, and everybody's trying to create advantages. So you probably need an interstate commerce type something that gets it all there. I don't think it's in the best interest of the players to necessarily be employees. And I think authentic name, image, and likeness is good for players, but I don't think pay for play is necessarily what we want. So, what is college? We all went to college to create value for our future. And, I think we want to keep, some semblance of that in terms of guys becoming and developing as people and students and developing a career off the field as well as developing the ability to play at the next level. So we've got to have a system that enhances all three of those.
I mean, you retired, but
again, because he's not really saying anything groundbreaking, and more importantly, I think he's been pretty consistent, right? And a lot of people, including me, when I was a little younger, a few years back, when he first came out with these things, and even when he was out and he was talking to Congress about the situation, and it's like It's so interesting, and we're going to talk about this too when we talk about Kirby Smart's comments with somebody who seemingly benefited so harshly or so greatly with a lot of people say, illegal payments, right? Everybody was saying that the SEC boys had plenty of Hellcats and plenty of cars and plenty of things to throw at some of these athletes to dominate for the years that they did. So I think it comes off hypocritical for certain people who have those presumptions about Nick Saban and the way he operates for him to also be someone who's outspoken. But I think what I've realized, and I think a lot of people else are realizing, is again, I can't be mad at Nick Saban for simply, again, he says he wants the players to get paid. If Nick Saban was saying, hey, NIL needs to stop, if whatever they needs to put, it would be a different conversation. I would still have some of the awful things I say about Lane Kiffin, because Lane Kiffin likes to complain and moan and cry about the portal and NIL, but never offers any actual reasons or anything that can change and can benefit, right? Whereas Nick Saban has kept it consistent, right? College athletes are spearheading historic changes and benefiting massive from NIL deals. They don't need this unmerited interference from a coach only seeking to protect the system that made him tens of millions. Now, this is the perspective from a House settlement. This is a leader, Steve Barman, and he's blasting Donald Trump and Nick Saban. And again, Nick Saban has already came out saying, I don't want to do those things, but it's just interesting that a lot of people have that conversation of like, all right, I mean, you can, like, what's the benefit here? I brought up the whole Texas Tech guy being on the other one, right? What does an oil billionaire at an undervalued Texas Tech school, how does he benefit from allowing a perennial little brother in the world of college football and in the state of Texas, to get a benefit after they've already had the number one portal class throwing NIL deals around, right? And of course, Kirby Smart, probably the last great dynasty in the SEC since the NIL stuff, I think is going to add a lot of parity, which is one of the reasons why I enjoy it. Kirby Smart has to say he's been pretty consistent as well. I just want to be able to have a freshman come in and not make more than a senior. I'd like for other sports to be able to survive. We're on the brink of probably one of the 1 to 2 years away from a lot of schools cutting sports. And to be transparent with you, a lot of schools have already started cutting sports. A lot of people are talking about Olympic sports being cut. Look, whenever you start making things a meritocracy and you start making things about how much money is being made at a collegiate level across all collegiate sports, because that's the problem. Everybody else, I think we can all agree that every other sport except for basketball, football, maybe baseball, right? Basketball, football, and baseball, those big ones. Every other sport that's a collegiate sport, it's a real collegiate sport. What I mean is that they're student athletes. They're playing this. They're, going to volleyball, but they're still doing sport. They're still doing their school. They're still doing whatever. And I'm not saying that there aren't football players who do school or players that do that stuff, but it's another level where we've separated them professionally in the way that we treat them honestly on campus, the way they interact with schools, the infamous rocks for jocks at UNC, right? Like these players getting either degrees that don't really matter or not going to school because they're so focused on this, what's a full-time job, making billions of dollars in revenue for not only these colleges, but these college organizations, NCAA, the boosters, and all this craziness that's going on, right? So we hold them to that standard, but then they almost get separated. And now all sports now at the collegiate level have to be treated like the NFL, like basketball, like baseball. And if you're not generating any money, well, get the fuck up out of here. So, these historic water polos, historic golf teams, well, golf makes money. I don't know. Let me chill out. These golf teams, these whatever teams getting chopped and cut, it's nastiness. But again, coming back to the whole, we have to understand who we're listening to. Because this is what Kirby Smart has achieved since NIL. Since NIL was implemented in, 2020, 2021, 2 SEC championships, a national championship, the number 1 recruiting class in 2024, number 2 recruiting class in 23 and 25, landed 8 number 1 overall players at their position, 29-4 overall record. So he does fall into the Lane Kiffin camp of dismantling or wanting the dismantlation or change of NIL while still benefiting, but he doesn't complain like Lane Kiffin. He typically has some actual actionable reasons. And then Charles Barkley, of all people, his ways on NIL. And the thing about Charles Barkley in this statement is that he kind of openly admits to illegally giving people money. So when people talk about, oh my God, NIL changed everything, I think NIL just kind of evened things. That's why we're seeing different schools pop up, right? It evened up, and now technically it did even up people who were bad but had money. University of Texas, I'm sorry, it was us. We were terrible. We were awful until NIL happened. I don't know what to tell you. I love Sark as much as the next guy, but that's what happened. We finally got money, so we finally got better. What a coincidence, huh? So Charles Barkley on NIL, I've given more money to Auburn, legal or illegal, than any athlete in the history of the school. At the notion that I'm going to come up with a couple $1 million every year so that we can be good at basketball and football, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So it's not only these situations that are boiling over. It's not only the president getting involved and Nick Saban getting involved. It's clearly even the boosters, booster fatigue. They're openly coming out and saying, yo, I could give illegal and do this. Like, it'll be a little easier. And I think it's setting up college sports as a whole in a peculiar situation. But do you think Nick Saban can do it? Do you think Donald Trump could do it? Do you think Deion Sanders can save college football, save NIL? How do you feel about NIL deals, college football, college sports, everything that's in between? Comment that down below and let me know. Like this video if you enjoyed. Dislike if you don't like it. Subscribe if you enjoy football content every single day. We do football, college, all different things else in between, man. I really appreciate y'all rocking with me. Cannot thank you enough. But I can't tell you how great you are, because you're great. You knew you're great. You know you're great. We'll see you next time.